As promised, buckle up for a session that will not only inspire you, but will also encourage you to reflect upon your own life and find the real self, as she talks about her own self and the power that resides within her. I'm going to welcome on stage a very powerful tete-a-tete on unshackling the leader within you, with someone who is the first woman IPS officer of India, who is also a tennis champion. Her life was depicted in a Telugu movie named Kartavyam. She has authored more than 12 books. And if I had another 12 hours, I will still have a lot more to say about her. But before I bring her on stage, let's watch a very short video with the attempt to cover the amazing life that she's lived. Need we say more? A huge round of applause to please welcome on stage Dr. Kiran Bedi. What an honor to share the stage with you, ma'am. You know, let me share with you that when I was a little girl, there was something called as a sadhana cut. And I always had one without knowing who sadhana was. Much later did I realize why it's called sadhana cut. And of course, you made Kiran Bedi cut very, very popular. And Renu was sharing in the morning that she's one of your fans right here. And here's another one speaking about you. And you know, I think the way you carry yourself has just made a statement. So thank you so much for joining us here today. May I now bring on stage Dilshad Vilimore, the founder, certified financial planner, and managing director, Dilza Consultant Private Limited, to indulge in a tete-a-tete with Dr. Kiran Bedi. Dilshad is a full marathoner, mother of two, a balanced life and a balanced individual, demystifying personal finance, keeping the fiduciary interest of clients in mind. With over 22 years of experience, she's brought peace in the minds of individuals by providing holistic financial planning advice. Over to you, Dilshad.
Check. The lights at the back, please. Dr. Bedi wants the lights on so that...
All of you lit better. All of you, the last few lines, yeah. I see you better now. But can be better lit? Can it be?
Is there a possibility of on
the
back lights?
More light?
That's, yeah.
More light? Nothing more light? Gets in their eyes.
They are unable to see you, ma'am, if the lights are on.
They're unable to see me?
Yeah.
But I want to see them. I want an eye contact with them. All right, let's find a middle path. All right, go ahead.
Great. So, ma'am, I want to start with the Ramon Magsaysay Award. So how many from the audience have heard about this award?
That's good general knowledge.
Right. So I think this is the award that is established to perpetuate the former Philippine President Ramon Magsaysay as an example of integrity in governance, courageous service to the people, and pragmatic idealism within a democratic society. So our special guest today here, Dr. Bedi, has won this award in 1994 under the Peace, Justice and Strong Institute.
I can see your questions.
So, she won this as a principled leader of peace and order who made the police to be the side of the community and the community to be more supportive of peacekeeping force. Dr. Bedi, it's an honor to have you here amongst us today. Thank you very much. Should I also stand, ma'am?
Yeah, let's stand. Because otherwise, and let's get closer. This is too far. Come here. Yeah, this is better. See, now I can see you better.
Ma'am, there's a step here.
I see that step. Come closer. Yeah, this way. Far better.
Okay. So let's get started.
Hanji,
Let's get started with your early days.
allow me to thank you all.
Please,
Who invited me? I want to know who invited me.
Mr. Venkatesh.
You
Varan.
invite. I want to thank you very much. Your mic.
Like Yukti was saying, I wielded your haircut for 3 years after you became IPS officer. So you are my hero, and I'm so glad to have you here.
And you grew them, I kept them this way. You grew them. You have options to now style them differently. So you kept your versatility. I became monotonous. Oh no, not at all. Yeah. Carry on.
So yeah, let's start with your early days, your childhood. Would you like to sit?
नहीं वो तो दिखेगा ही नहीं कुछ.
Okay, and your childhood experiences, how has that shaped what you are today?
Well, the kind of upbringing and the manner in which I grew, I think I was far ahead of my times. And girls in India still need what I did, still need what I got. And they're still struggling to get what I got. But I got it much, much earlier. And I didn't make any effort to do that. Because you don't choose your parents, you just born to them. What they're thinking, how they're thinking, belongs to them. I had very visionary parents. My father was a great tennis player. Mummy loved education, ahead of their times. And they belonged to a family which was paying the bills of my father's club bills for tennis. And daddy was employed as a part of my grandfather's business. So he had a pocket money, and there was a common kitchen. So there was no financial pressure on my father and my parents to run the home. So sports became breakfast, lunch, dinner. So sports and the best schooling of the city in Amritsar, the best school, nutrition, education, sports. What else do you want? I had it. And I was truly blessed. And I realized at the age of around 9, 10 that I was different from the rest of my friends because the other friends didn't have this. They didn't have sports. They had the best school, but they didn't have sports. They didn't have fathers and mothers dreaming for them to be growing up to be somebody different and an identity of their own. They were looking for another's identity. They were looking for a migrant identity. I was looking for my own identity. And the migrant identity is to become somebody else's wife, Mrs. at that time. I was looking for my own identity that I created. So that's what I'm saying. It was truly a blessed upbringing. This is exactly what every girl in India today is still looking for. Many of them are getting it, and those of them you got it, you are here. Those of you who got it, you are here. And those of you who didn't get it are still waiting to. So I think this is my upbringing. This is a blessing which I inherited from my karma. I didn't do anything for it. But what I did was a realization that I am specially gifted and I must develop it and take it to the logical end. And that's where this is the land's end, right? So it is an end to the logical end. So this is what happened by That's a good climb. Rest, what I got as destiny, I further built on it after realization that I am gifted.
Tell us more about sports, because sports is a great leveler, they say.
Sports?
Is a great leveler.
Leveler.
Yeah, everyone is humble, everyone learns team spirit, learns to. So how has the sports prowess helped you?
Oh, they built me who I am today. I got my stamina from that. I got my resilience from there. I got my competitive spirit from there. I got my collaboration from there. I got my strategies from there. I traveled because of that. I got my friends from there. The tragedy is, at that time, there was no WhatsApp. So I lost a lot of my friends because there were no phone calls and you couldn't remember the numbers and you could put the diary in and diaries got lost. So you have to trace your friends time to time, where are they? So I think I got a great exposure. I traveled around the country. I traveled the world. I went through the third class travel. I went through unreserved compartments. I fought my way through. So it was like learning to create resources for yourself and also be somebody what you want and have your way. If you want to get a sleeper berth because you have not done any reservation, you get into the compartment earlier, you become resourceful, you malo. That means you occupy the luggage career. So the bags went under the seat, that became a bed. Because if you're traveling from all the way from Delhi and Amritsar to Trivandrum, you're 2 nights and 3 days, or 3 days and 2 nights. How do you go without a sleep and you have to go and play a competitive tennis match the time you land? You learn to create for yourself. All that I learned to be different and innovate and entrepreneurship, it was all enterprise. All these, when you play, you learn to innovate, you learn to create things. You never say die, you create. And that's how it did. All this came through sports. This was read in the books. You read this in the books, but when you play, you naturally learn them. You actually practice them. Otherwise, your survival goes. You can't. At night, many times in Allahabad railway station, I used to land in the middle of the night all by myself as a 15-year-old girl, and my parents used to risk it. I went through a lot of risk and adventure. So 15-year-old, there was nobody to travel, Central India Championships, Allahabad, I land in the middle of the night. Why do you think I had short hair? Do you know the reason? To protect my identity. Pata hi na chale ye ladki hai ki ladka. Pata hi nahi chale. My parents said, pata nahi chalna chahiye ladka ya ladki. That's how I dared to do more. And I used to wear a dress which was a tracksuit and a t-shirt. Nobody knew whether it's a girl or a boy. So before they realize it's a girl and they try to chase me, I was already out of sight. So at Allahabad railway stations, I still remember I hired a rickshaw in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock, and I hired a rickshaw because I had to go to the club. And I said, "Aap ja sakte hain? Ja sakte hain? Baitho. Bhaiya, bache baitho. Bhaiya baitho." So I sat down, and then what he did, on the way, he hired another person, said, "Tum bhi baith jao." See, that's how he wanted to earn extra and share the rickshaw, without knowing who is sitting here. And I wasn't very comfortable with another companion around, but I did it. So this is how adventurous life was. So if you do this at the age of 14, 13, 12, 15, you're ready for life. You're ready for life.
So let's move to your career, ma'am. What were some of the memorable anecdotes that you have experienced during your life at the police force? Were there any discriminations? What were those hardships that you faced?
I'm glad you asked the preparatory questions, because the childhood is your preparation. It's a building a foundation. Without we knowing what we're doing as teenagers, we do not know. We're actually creating all these experiences of life, but they're actually building a foundation. And at that time, I did not know that at the age of 22, I'll join the Indian Police Service. I did not know that. But I knew, as I said, I shall have my identity. I'm not going to be a migrant. And therefore, migrant means I leave my parents' home and go elsewhere and lose my identity. So that's how I did not know. But all this was preparing me. And see, I'm glad you asked these questions, because if you had not known this foundation, then you would not have linked the later part to this part. The latter part was nothing but a culmination of an expression, who I had become, who I was capable of, my potential, my confidence, my dream, my vision to work with the country, to work with the government. So therefore, when I joined the IPS and wrote my examination and wrote IPS as my first preference, without knowing that there were many other services too, I wrote IPS first preference. Why? Because I was an NCC cadet for 4 long years. Prior to that, while being an Asian tennis champion, I was also an NCC cadet. So I was either in a tracksuit or in uniform of an NCC or in skirts, nowhere restrictive in any way. I could cycle around, adventure, get teased by boys, tease them back, hit them, they would hit me. So I learned to take things as they were coming. So when I joined the service, the Ustad asked me, Ustad did not know my background. Ustad said, so, madam, aap same training karenge jo ladke karenge? I said, मैं बिल्कुल same करूँगी. Ustad ji, अच्छा, तो same ये uniform का क्या करें? मैंने कहा पहले same uniform भी पहनूँगी. तो क्यों? क्योंकि मुझे same काम करना है. तो he was very relieved, कोई training की alter नहीं करना पड़ा. Government was very relieved कि uniform के rules नहीं और बनाने पड़े. So I made my government work very easy. Same training, same uniform. The only thing is they gave me reasonably a separate cottage to live in. And I had my own little cottage while the men were stacked up in barracks. But that's the only difference I did. I did it the same way. And I said, that set the tone. Now, had I had not had the kind of background I had, you think I could have made a breakthrough? No way. I would have never dared to go near the police training, where there was nothing but from waking up till night, you are all the time working out, riding, firing, learning, outdoor parade, learning the forensics, everything outdoor, plenty, and crime and dust, everything. But I loved it because that's what I was born out of. So I think that's what really worked. And they were very relieved. The good news is that when I was sent to Mussoorie for training, the National Academy for Administration, and all the services got together, I suddenly got a call from the Ministry of Home Affairs. The then Union Home Minister was Mr. K.C. Pant. And K.C. Pant and I were tennis linked, because K.C. Pant was president of the All India Lawn Tennis Association at some time and was giving me lots of good little prizes coming here. He knew me. And he called me to Delhi, and he said, are you really serious that you want to join the IPS? You know, Kiran, that there is nobody before. I said, all the more better, sir, if there's nobody before. Somebody has to cut the tape. And he was very thrilled. He didn't force me to all say, change your mind. I said, sir, I look forward to a great training ahead, and I will love that training because that's what I love. So I think that's how things changed. And thereafter, any woman who opted for the IPS, given a first preference, even by mistake, if wanted to change the option, was not allowed to change. Unfortunately, because now the country was wanting more women in the IPS. Yeah.
So, Dr. Beri, today our theme is leadership. And I think, when Renu and I were talking, we couldn't think of anyone better than you representing the leadership, because with leadership, there are so many things like self-discipline, responsibilities. So how did you demonstrate that as a leader?
Being a head girl of the college, you saw that? It's leadership. Being a head girl of the college, you are always expressing leadership in your own small wins. Declamation contest, all leadership. Traveling as a tennis player, all leadership. See, without me realizing that when we deny girls and boys in upbringing these kind of decision-making and this kind of freedom and independence of doing things themselves, you're denying them leadership. And that is where I learned the ropes very early, very naturally. Why? Because I was becoming 100% decisive. I was confident. I was clear in my mind what I don't, and I knew how to deal with nonsense. See? So later on, we have nonsense in our jobs, or we have challenges of our capacity and capability. I was already testing it on the ground. And I had the stamina because I was cycling around and I was testing my endurance. That's what we do, get tested. So leadership is born early. Very, very important. So that's why many of us now getting interviewed in our jobs are asked, what were your extracurricular activities when you were small? What were the extracurricular activities you were associated with when you were growing up as a student? Overseas students today come back to my NGO. Who's students overseas who want to get a scholarship, some of the Ivy Leagues, they come back to my NGO and they said, ma'am, can we work with you? I said, why? He says, because this is what is valued overseas, and they ask you, what have you done extra alongside your academics? And therefore they come and spend with me months together to learn the ropes of leadership. And we put them through the grind and give them the certificate. And the certificate they get from me, because that's where it's a genuine leadership. So we also make them work hard, saying, go to the ground, see things for yourself, experiment for yourself, write a blog every day, make a little video, put it on your website so it's authentic, it's the same day. So you have to learn this from early on. And that's what I'm saying. Leadership grows with you. But after that, you learn a skill. You go to an MBA, you go to an engineering, you learn all these. That's a skill. But your character is already built. Your leadership formation is already made, because nothing but a bundle of habits. Habits of how do you respond, how do you deal with people, how do you deal with conflict, how do you deal with friends you've lost, how do you deal with fights. All this is part of the growth. So if you've learned it as a teenager, you're ready. The only thing is then you're getting fine-tuned. You're learning the theory of these leadership. And then you do the management courses. And then you really know what is more to understand. Then, of course, it's a fine-tuning. But the basic approach of emotional quotient, particularly emotional management, I think intelligence quotient is already coming through our books. What is learned early on is your emotional management. And what were we doing? Emotionally understanding, crying, fighting, making friends, losing them, and then winning, losing, failing, succeeding, winning, envying, jealousy, all this anger, all this was being handled. All this is not loving, caring, playing. I think all this leadership, if you learn this early and you continue to be aware as you develop, you grow up. And therefore what you learn in theory in management schools, then it's actually you relate it with these personal incidents.
Yeah, absolutely. I think today, the whole day, we've been learning about emotional connect. And, that is the basis of, the relationship that one must build with, in our case, our clients. So I think it does depend on how good we are able to connect with our clients.
That's right. How honest you've been in your childhood. How trustworthy were you? It's very important that as a child, were you trustworthy? Were you gossipy? Were you gossipy? Were you dishonest in your handling? Were you unethical as a leader? These are all emotional questions. So you will remain ethical by and large. That you can change habits for the better. You can go bad and you can go better. That's an option we exercise as we grow. But the basics have already been set.
You mentioned about your NGO, ma'am. Could you tell us a little more about the work that you do there?
My NGOs is an amazing, first time ever a serving officer set up a foundation. I was then a deputy commissioner of North Delhi Police, and I used to walk my area every day. I was a big walker. I go to the ground every time. I learn on the ground. I watch. I'm a very, very observer. I want to learn every day, and learning doesn't come sitting in the office. So as a police officer, every day morning, I would leave the ground, leave my home, go to police stations, go to the areas where the problems are. So here is one problem I encountered. And I went to a particular area, and my SHO said, ma'am, idhar mat jana. I said, क्यों नहीं जाना? मैडम यहाँ पर वो औरतें जो है ना, वो बहुत शिकायतें लगाती हैं, चिपट जाती हैं, और फिर पुलिस को शिकायत लगाती हैं. All of you understand Hindi?
Yes.
और चिपट जाती हैं, और वो गलत फिर इंक्वायरी, विजिलेंस इंक्वायरी शुरू हो जाती है. तो ऐसे तो प्रॉब्लम क्या है? मैडम बाहर यहाँ बड़ा नशा बेड़ा बिकता है, ड्रग्स भी बिकते हैं, बच्चे भी छोटी चोरियां करते हैं, बहुत सारी क्रिमिनलिटी है. तो ऐसे इसीलिए तो जाना है. इसीलिए जाना है, उधर जाओ जहाँ प्रॉब्लम है, जहाँ सब कुछ ठीक है उधर तुम्हारी ज़रूरत नहीं है, तुम्हारी मेरी ज़रूरत है जहाँ प्रॉब्लम है, चलो इसमें चलो. And it was dirty, it was filthy, it had flies, it had muck, everything. It was unhealthy and very mosquito prone. It was an unhealthy den, unauthorized colony of these kind of. So when we walked through the streets, I realized, yes, it is a case of drug trafficking, drug sale, arrest, lawyer money, bail, jail, come back again, and the cycle of jail, bail was going on. And the police was claiming credits, itne cases pakda, itne cases. I said, let's stop the cycle of repeat criminality, let's prevent it. Let's work on prevention. How do we do prevention? So that is where my NGO was born, to prevent the crime. And prevention started with rehabilitation, where we brought work for women addicts. We brought schools for children. We brought work therapy for the men. And we started to stop only registering cases and arresting people. We started to work on their work rate. And I had the Chandni Chowks and the town halls of the close by. And I told them, donate me sewing machines. I want to start with sing. I got the singer on. Then you didn't even have the concept of corporate social responsibility. But I got them in. I said, it's your responsibility, because these people are the ones who come and steal in your Chandni Chowks, etc., and run away. You have a role to play with me. Come and work with me and come and support me. So we set up sewing school centers in the same locality. We start to clean up the same locality. We send the children to school from the same locality. Then the government of the day, because there was not a voter camp, it was not a vote camp cluster, therefore they were not bothered. They were all migrants from Rajasthan and close by, the labor class. So they had to set up camp schools. So we set up gully schools in the lanes. So this is how, 1988, I registered this foundation as a serving police officer, along with another 16 of us serving who were in the same district of North District. And we founded a foundation called the Navjyoti India Foundation. Till today, it has trained, educated thousands and thousands. We've taken people out of poverty line, educated them, skilled them. Some of them are already parents. Some of them are our teachers. Had we not worked in that locality, we were only bred criminals. So we start to work on prevention rather than detection and numbers. And that's how my first foundation was born. Today, it is partnered with Dell Technologies, etc. Many of those children are learning programming, coding, artificial intelligence, computers, running. So we are now into, you can go to Navjyoti India Foundation website, and you can see how far it has come. Then we worked on villages. We kept expanding. You don't stop. When you begin something good, it keeps growing by itself. It gathers its own momentum. And we started from a cluster. That's what happened. This is where I led to crime prevention. Why? Because I believed as a police officer, my first duty is not crime detection, it's crime prevention. So I will work on prevention and detection, and then rehabilitation. So this is how, friends, this chain was started. And we were serving officer, the first of its kind, an NGO. My commissioner then, Ved Marwa, was a large-hearted man. He could have said, no formality, go to the Home Ministry, take the permission. He didn't say that. I just went to him and said, sir, we need this as a crime prevention measure. You be the ex officio president. Then let the police commissioner be the ex officio president, and I will be the one of the workers of that. And I wrote the whole deed, and he became the ex officio president. Thereafter, of course, we broke away from Delhi police because of certain reasons and became independent. And today it's Navjyoti India Foundation. When we started it, it was Delhi Police Foundation for such and such. Now it is Navjyoti India Foundation, and it's grown by its own feet, and it's been recognized one of the leading NGOs of this country in water harvesting, because we were asked to work in rural areas as well and work with women empowerment, etc. We expanded. My second foundation, I didn't only stop at one. Second was when I got the Raman Magsaysay Award, and you started the whole session with Magsaysay. When an award comes, it has a message. And the message is, what are you going to do with it? So when I went to make the acceptance speech in Manila, when I got the Raman Magsaysay in 1994, I dedicated the award to the creation of a new foundation. And now it was a trust deed. It was called the India Vision Foundation, which would work on the children of prisoners. And because I saw, as working in the prison, children who were part of the criminal population, and they would go to the courts with their mothers, knew the 302, 307, Mulaiza, they knew the language of crime. I want to take them away, wean them away, and we started the schooling inside the prison. And today it's a national policy that every prison will have it. So these are my two foundations, friends, also continuing to grow.
I think demonstrating self-worth in difficult times is what you are, ma'am. Leadership, all in all.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's move to the next question. You've worn different hats in the last 30 years. Police, Lieutenant Governor, UN advisor, social activist, and an author. So each of these required a different roles to play. So, each of these cases requires a different style of leadership. And how have you been able to demonstrate and change these various styles in the roles that you've played?
If you see, all these hats was people-centric. It was all people-centric as to what matters for people, what matters for community, whether I'm a Lieutenant Governor of Pondicherry, or I'm Inspector General of Prisons, or I'm a Delhi Police Commissioner for training, it's all people-centric. It's all about empowering people. It's all about how do you upgrade their skills, how do you make the quality of life better, except that the focus shifts. The focus shifts. Like, for instance, if I'm in prisons, then the focus is prisoner rehabilitation. But it's again people-centric. Similarly, if I'm in Pondicherry as its Lieutenant Governor, it's the whole Union Territory-centric, where people have all varied needs, but how do I meet them? But all these different hats which I did wear, I think made me more comprehensive and more versatile, more understanding, more compassionate in all what I did, because I didn't lack experience in every posting of mine added to my compassion within to serve, and the will and the determination to make the difference. So wherever I was as a leader, I made sure I make the difference. I leave the place a better place to live in than it was before. And it was not after I leave, it's everyday difference. It was a win-win every day. And one of my typical way of working has been walk my work, walking my work every day. In my secret and key of my learning is walk. Every 9 a.m. I would walk my prison, meet out the 10,000 prisoners behind those tall big gates. Look out at 10,000. They could see me. See, I'm very fond of eye contact. They could see me. I could see them. And I could read who was sulking, who was sick, who was mischievous, who was not falling in line. I could detect. Similarly, and I could provide their need. Similarly, when I would go to a police station every morning to meet the roll call constabulary, breaking all hierarchies. So my second nature of policing learning is I break hierarchies. I'm a flat command and control. I don't hierarchical. I'm a very flat, and I think that's a very special female strength which must never be lost. Women are non-hierarchical by nature. They're more inclusive by nature. This is a strength which I built on without knowing, reading a management book. Because the time when I was growing up, there were no management books of these kinds. There were no Harvard Business Review articles which were coming on the Twitter, on the social media that I could read and download and read. No, it was sheer common sense. So all I did was that this is what I need if I were in that position. Must give them what I would need if I were in that position. Just put yourself in that position. I put myself in a prisoner's position. I put myself in a grievance person who has a problem of water, civic amenities as Lieutenant Governor. I put myself as a police constable in a police station. What does he need from the deputy commissioner or the senior officer? I put myself in the position of a trainee as to what would he need for his training to be better. All you have to do is put yourself in that shoe. I learned this from my father. My daddy taught me to say, you want to know where the shoe pinches? Kiran, get into that shoe. You'll know where the wearer knows. So I think that was very iconic, where every time I imagined myself, if I were in that position, I'm fortunately gifted that I am outside. So I think that is what mattered. And it provided me every day new solutions. It was almost like constructive discontent. I've always moved with this constructive discontent. What is constructive discontent? Constructive, not destructive. But I'm looking for what can I do better. I'm not happy with the status quo. I am going to be walking around the position and see what I can do better. With the result that every day I returned home having made the place a better place, whether it was food or whether it... So I remember, let's say, give you an example. In the prisons, as I would walk the prison, I would ask the prisoners, नाश्ता ठीक किया? खाना खाया? Breakfast खाया? हाँ जी मैं खाया. क्या खाया? मैं जब ब्रेड मिला, 2 ब्रेड मिला, तो मैंने बोला ब्रेड ठीक था? नहीं ब्रेड में उल्ली लगी थी. मैंने कहा अच्छा उल्ली लगी थी? क्यों उल्ली लगी थी? तो मैंने कहा अच्छा उल्ली लगी थी. Ulli means algae. You see, it was stale bread. So I said, I checked with my, why did the, and it used to come from those very established name, came Modern Bakery. It was being baked outside the prison, and thousands of loaves, because I had 10,000 of them, and you can see 20,000 loaves would come every day, so much of bread would come, and sometimes it would be stale. I said, no, this cannot go on. I didn't take it as it is. We said, we shall make our own bread. Hereafter, and I asked the prisoners, तुमको किसको baking आती है? कौन तुम में से bread बनाते आया है? There were many hands inside my prison who were skilled in making bread. So we made a little panchayat of them, brought them out, asked them क्या चाहिए? Madam, ये drum चाहिए, ये सामान चाहिए, ये चाहिए. Then I had another friend who was very good in baking. I enlisted his support, and today, you know, the Har provides fresh bread to its 12,000 prisoners every day, ever since then. And do you know what? It sells its own bread. And all the money which it earns goes into the welfare fund. It doesn't go to the government. Tihar is one of the richest prison in the world. It's got captive client, captive customer. They sell bread, all the money which they're earning goes into the welfare fund. So, how they use the welfare fund is another story, but they have to use it well, and they got the money. Why doesn't the government control it? Because when I set up the bread unit, I anticipated it. I said, this cannot go into government-controlled hands. It must stay within prison authorities. So I signed an MOU with the person who gave me the skill, and I said, this is between prison authorities and that man. Both of us contributed to set up the bread unit. I put in some money from my award money, which I got, and he also put in. And both of us together set up the bread unit. And imagine effort. Since then, there is no complaint. No, uske बाद bread नहीं, नमकीन बनने लगा है, buns बनने लग गए, Tihar special बनने लगे, TJ special बनने लगे. My successors expanded. There were some Guptas who succeeded me, and the Guptas started to expand it as great business.
Excellent.
This is what happens.
Wow.
Sometimes. So what I'm saying is, how does it come? It's from constructive discontent. I cannot accept what is wrong once it's identified. And how did it come? Not by reporting. Not by asking for report. Report bhejo, aaj ki bread, report bhejo, and I have one file. No, there's no file. There was no file. As IG prison, I had no file. I had seen the work. I'd seen with myself. I made my notes. I had a team meeting. In the team meeting, I said, these are the things I've observed. Let's sort them out. So there was nothing. Just 1-page note. Every day I was observing what was not right. Many things went on the notice board. Prisoners could see what the IG prison had said. It was as transparent as possible. Interestingly, friends, I'm reading at the moment today that Vidya, the new company, that Taiwanese leader, CEO, who's Vidya? Do you know what he's doing? Exactly this. He's got a flat command control. He is sharing all the minutes of the meeting openly. He asks for open discussions. Read him. Read him. What I did in 94, he is doing it in 2024. That's it. As simple as that. And what was this? This was not a Harvard mind, it was an Indian mind. A mind Indian which was compassionate, which was wanting to serve the people, which had the strength of spirituality within, which had the spirit of giving within, which had the spirit of care within. That's all you need. And thereafter, there's another very important thing which I used to do, which is a great practice for you as leaders, is feedback. We got still time, sir? Do we have time?
Yes, we do.
Because you're looking at the watch, so we can wrap up if you're getting a little bored. Okay. So, oh, you're a photographer. So you were looking at when do I take a photograph? I give you one thing very interesting. How was I learning every day? The discontent was not saying, "Main dekhungi to hai." No. There was a mobile petition box inside. I used to circulate a mobile petition box. It was a locked box, a wooden box, which had you could put a letter in it. And it had a handle. So constable would go to barrack to barrack to barrack. Okay, no problem. I think go back. The constable would go to barrack to barrack to barrack and say, "Chithi likho madam ko." I used to tell the prisoners, "Mujhe chithi likho. Write to your madam." There was no email. There was no WhatsApp. There was no phone calls, nothing. So I used to open a mobile petition box. I used to get letters from prisoners as a feedback. And in that feedback, I used to get everything to know kahan drugs bik rahi hain, kahan koi jhagda hone wala hai, kahan communal riot hone wala hai, kaun corruption kar raha hai, kahan झट से पता चल जाता. Just that box, it only cost me 10 rupees to make that feedback box. That box, which would go to 10,000, and I used to open the letters, read them myself, kept them confidential, and dealt with them. And resolved every day there was something new which went to the culture change, etc. So feedback is very vital. But how do you do it? That's exactly what this chairman is doing in his how does he get a feedback? He does open discussions. 40 people demand, flat 40 people are direct controls now, direct commands to him. He is talking to them directly to understand what is going on. That's why he is one of the richest and the most successful emerging as a special company in the world, is because of his management tools, management styles. So these are very simple. You don't need to wait to read and know and trained. It's common sense. Put yourself in that position and ask yourself, if I were there, what would I? I want to be heard. I like to be heard. I want to be recognized. I want to be co-opted. I want to be recognized for this good idea. I want to be seen that my idea is further developed. Doesn't matter if it doesn't succeed, but at least I'm respected for it. So this is the key, friends, you asked me.
Wonderful. I think walk the talk, open lines of communication, and being there and getting a feedback hands-on. I think these are lessons we all have to learn in our own practice, ma'am. Now, as you can see, this room is full of financial advisors. So I can't let you go without asking some question on money.
You're asking the wrong person.
So, ma'am, what does money mean to you? If you had all the money in the world, what would you do differently?
As long as the money gives me good health, thank you very much. If the money is just that much and it gives me good health to earn more money and lead a better quality of life, I can sleep well, I think money is miracle. To my mind, as simple as definition. I'm not looking at, well, we all need our safety nets. I have my all of us have safety nets. But if that money is well earned and it gives me mental peace, and it gives me physical health and emotional health, also keeps me spiritually strong, I am the richest person in the world. I am the richest. If that same money is giving me nutrition, good health, and the same money gives me wonderful, loving relationships. Absolutely. It gets me best of friends, and it gives me a reputation of being trustworthy, that he or she is a good human being. I think the money's done it. Extra money, then yes, I would love to give away. If I can give away money to make others happier and also healthier, I think I'm the richest. If they have the money to give away.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. True words of wisdom, inspiration. Ma'am, we are almost at the end. Would you like
You got
to...
19 minutes. There you are.
No, we have audience questions
Audience
also.
questions. Okay, good. Most welcome.
So, is there anything that you'd like to say as a final word of inspiration and motivation that has already there in this inspired audience from you?
Well, thank you. This is one question I've come prepared with. Can I share it with you? Because you gave me 2 hours to think before I came here at the hotel, and I thought myself and made a few notes. I'll quickly share with you. I trust they'll be very useful for you. Exactly this answer, this question. And thereafter, we can take the Q&A. Friends, here are some life-changing business lessons which I want to learn with you. Here are my few life learning lessons I've learned, practiced, read, and they've worked. Number 1 lesson, friends, you will get all you want in life. Remember, you will get all you want in life if you help enough other people get they want. And you're all investors. So you will all have enough if you want in life, if you help your person who you are invested for, and if they get what they want, number 1. Number 2, success is lived. Success is lived. How? It's in doing, not the getting. It's in the trying, not the triumph. So success is every day an effort as small wins. It's not the end. It's the whole process of a daily basis. Third, life-changing business lesson is keep moving. As I said, as I told you, I kept moving and I keep moving. Even these visits I keep moving. I budget my travels, I budget my selection of my invitations, but I keep moving because I don't want to get into a comfort zone where I say, "Mujhe travel nahi karna hai, bada mushkil hai." But I break the journey, I break the mold, and I travel because every time travel is not very comfortable. Long journeys, long waits at the airports, but it is keeping moving. So keep moving as you do. Fourth, do you have the time? You all have the time. It's the lack of direction, not the lack of time is the problem. It's the lack of direction. We all have, remember, 24 hours. Within the same 24 hours, I've done all that I've shown you. 2 NGOs running, and I have a big budget for both of them. I work very hard to keep them going. I have a large paycheck to give, but I raise it and I succeed. But in the process, I reach out to hundreds of people whose lives we are changing within the same 24 hours. 5, make motivation a habit. How do you make motivation a habit? How do I make a motivation a habit? Let me share with you. When I'm brushing my teeth or I'm bathing or I have time, I switch on the best YouTube. I look for the most inspirational message from the YouTube. I listen to the morning YouTube. I choose my speakers. I listen to them. And YouTube today is a gold mine for such like discourses which you can listen. 6th, find good everywhere. Best of all, human emotions is gratitude. So if you don't find good anywhere, seek gratitude. Be grateful for where you are, what you are. Be grateful even the fact that you're alive and healthy, I think is great. It's a great emotion. So that's what I thought is that find good everywhere. If you don't find it everywhere, find it right here within you. That you're alive, you're kicking, you're healthy, and you're sane. And you got your IQ, EQ intact. 7th, over-deliver. Over-deliver. It's like treating 1,000 clients as if you treated 10,000 clients. If that 1,000 client is worth only a few dollars, it's like having treated them as clients which had much more. So if you over-deliver, I always over-delivered. I want to let you know, I always over-delivered. And that is why they all come back to say, "Aapne bahut hamare liye kiya," but not deliberately kiya, I want to over-deliver. Okay, are you satisfied? Can I do anything more? Can you come back to me if it's not done? So they left with an assurance that we can, that's called concern. It's like a doctor. One doctor gives you, "Pharapat krosin jao." Second, doctor says crocin, but take care. Sit here and see if it helps. Third, say, call me back. 2 days after, send me a WhatsApp message. How are you feeling? Otherwise, I'll come back to you if you need to. Otherwise, you come back. You have an appointment. That's called over-deliver. So if you over-deliver, you stay in the hearts and minds of people. Over-deliver. That's called getting out of comfort zone. And second, last but not the least, I think, is delay your gratification. Something you're looking for. It's like very hungry. You look for junk food, which may not be immediately benefit. It may meet your immediate need, but not long term. So delay gratification wherever you can. I'm only using a very rudimentary example. So friends, as far as I'm concerned, I'll give you my last bit, a few lines after the Q&A is over. Leave you inspired.
Would you like to sit for the Q&A?
No, I won't sit. I'll stand. Because this way I'm connecting
Great.
better.
So, can we have the mics move around, please?
Go ahead.
Ma'am, it was truly inspiring listening to you today, and I'm sure a lot of women would be inspired. While she spoke about the many roles which you play, I think the one role which was very important, which was a role as a mother. And we working women who are mothers, we always go through this, that while we want to excel professionally, but there's always a guilt that we have a child back at home, and how do we balance between our professional careers and our roles as mothers also. So it will be really insightful to know that how did you, strike this balance with all these professional achievements, also, handling your role as a mother.
First of all, plan to be a mother. Plan to be a mother, not become accidental mother.
Yeah.
Plan to be a mother. When I say plan to be a mother, you're looking already for the school close by.
Yeah.
You're already looking for the support system in place. You're already looking with the time division between your supporting family. Who is going to do what? See? So plan your motherhood. Not have unplanned. Planning even the budget for the child. Having a nanny is a cost. Right? So if you have all these into place, then you are not suddenly taken by surprise, what do I do with my job? And also, let your boss know that you're planning to be a mother. And that maybe when the child is needing you, and the corporate house sets up places of comfort for you, so that you can feed the child and be with the child along with the nanny. That's what I meant. Plan the child. Don't be taken by surprise. And if you are taken by surprise, start planning. And being motherhood is not a compulsion. You have to choose to be a mother. And when you want to be a mother, it also has to be a very careful choice. Because remember, child is a lifelong life.
Lifelong investment too.
Not investment. That's what I'm saying. It's a lifelong parallel life.
Yeah.
Parallel life. The child is going to outgrow you.
Yeah.
So therefore, your life changes. Woman's life changes after being a mother. In fact, the life-changing alteration for a woman is when she becomes a mother.
Yeah.
Not when she becomes a wife. Mother.
Yeah, exactly.
Because now somebody else is looking up to her to say, now take care of me, mommy. Make me what you want me to be. So you are then living her or his life, not your own anymore. That kind of dedication is required to be a mother. So motherhood is life-altering and requires a whole lot of planning and delegation and distribution responsibilities and also financial investments.
Yes. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thanks.
Ma'am, I was truly inspired with the story that you shared as you started working with the inmates' families and their children. So actually, I had the opportunity of noticing something this happening at my city, Kolkata. This is something of worry that is haunting me. Suppose there are so many families which are devastated with somebody staying in jail for years. So their family are financially devastated. So is there any way that we, the advisors, without earning money, that we do something for this kind of, from the advisor's point of view, like small amount deposited in NPS or certainly something like that, to help these kind of families, those who cannot see any financial future?
Promote life insurance from the beginning. In fact, I wish so much of support systems is coming from the government of India right now.
In fact, there are many government schemes that are being offered, which can be taken, for the poor children. So I think, ma'am is.
Those are the schemes of Ujjwala scheme, loan schemes, Mudra schemes. They're very good schemes. But there's one scheme waiting to happen in this country. Where you're born, you get a life insurance, which takes care of health insurance as well. But in the health insurance, there's already a scheme where 5 lakhs per year per family is being given allowance. Now you have to link them with that scheme. They are probably is not linked, as she said. There is a scheme, but there's no link, and the person does not know how to connect with that scheme. So if you can become the connector, it can help you. You can reach that person straight to the hospital, and hospital now is duty bound to give him or her free medical care. 5 lakhs per year.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
One sec, use the mic, please.
Sorry, it's a tough question. I'm going by my first memory of you. Right? I moved to Delhi in late 80s. Right? I'm sure you remember that. That situation where the lawyers and, there was a thing. And I used to wonder that this person, right, there is so much of, created controversy, but the person is still doing a great job. That was my first impression of you. So, you've talked about the good things, but obviously people create hurdles in your way, right? How did you overcome them? How did you address them?
Oh, I'm so glad they did. I'm telling you, I'm glad the hurdles come. Otherwise, how do you know there's a tennis match to play? So you volunteer to play. No, what I'm saying is you don't call for a controversy, you don't call for pain, but something comes, then you deal with it. And say, you go to the root cause of the pain, and you start looking for the solutions rather than complaining. So my approach to life has been, if something's come by, not by my doing, but has something happened, then I have to analyze it and seek where can I get the solution and how can I resolve it, rather than sulking, complaining, and getting under it. So if you get ride over it, if you start riding over it, you start succeeding. And that's what I said. And when you start succeeding, you start winning, gaining in confidence, and you become a better leader, or a better provider, or a better administrator, because you've survived those. So every hurdle which comes, if you get to the root of the problem, rather than the problem itself, it makes you a stronger person. Thank you. You got 6.5 minutes to go. I see the clock.
A great opportunity to ask you a question, ma'am. My mother, Mrs. Kailash Kapoor, was your student in NCC. And since then, she always mentions you when we talk leadership at home. I'm a leadership coach today. And I help people understand the aspects of leadership they already have and how to bridge the gap and learn what they need to. But here is a challenge that I see many face, and I've yet to come up with a very good answer to the question. You see, not every person who has a leadership role is necessarily a leader. They need to learn how to lead and do justice to that role. And sometimes these so-called leaders become the roadblock themselves. So one below them is probably a coachee to me saying, I want to be a better leader. And then they go all, gung-ho about doing things differently, being a better person, etc. And then the roadblock hits them hard and they don't know how to go beyond that. So in your experience, have you faced such roadblocks of people who are senior to you, or you've seen people in these positions of leadership roles, but not really having the leadership qualities that they must?
I think sometimes you have to tolerate them if you want to continue with them, and learn not the wrong habits of them, but observe them, because nobody's going to last forever. Right. So best is observe the wrongs of this leader and observe the strengths of the leader, work on the strengths, but don't imbibe the weaknesses of the leader, and bite for your time if you're wanting to bite. Otherwise, exercise your choices. So I would say there are always, you don't have the best of the leaders. You've got authoritarian leaders, dictatorial leaders, egoistic leaders, right? Very hyper leaders, because sometimes they've got eccentricities.
Yes.
So you got to quickly look at these, and I had many. Oh, I've had politicians.
Yeah.
I've had politicians.
Yes.
So if we can count their qualities on these, I don't know. some of them. So what do? You tolerate them.
Yeah.
Because you've got to work with them. That's a choice you're making.
True.
So when you have to then find out what are the resources I can deal with? What is the network I can work with? What's a strategy you can apply with? You may succeed, you may still not succeed. But don't give up. You will find your way through. And you will succeed, provided your intention is only to do good, not to defeat others, but to even make that person win. Wish him well also.
Yes.
कि तू भी जीत. Because in your wishing that person also well is actually joy to yourself, is relief to yourself.
True.
But wishing him ill is also ill to yourself.
Absolutely.
So I would say, bide time, not copycat him, learn from his life's lessons, and then I think or take a decision. Do you want to stay on or not? So these are, but if it's not an option that you have to stay on, it's just that's the only option, then you look at other strategies gradually and find your networking places. It works. It depends who you are dealing with.
Right.
Politician, a bureaucrat, a public servant, or anybody else. It depends, because all persons are not alike.
Yes.
You have to deal with a person, not as a community. Analyze him, find his weak points and strengths, and work on his strengths and identify his weak points and see how they can be overlooked. How can you adjust? But this is all the art of living, art of life.
Yeah. I think sometimes what you need to learn is what not to do. And
Yes,
and
what
that's
not to
learn.
do too,
Yeah.
correctly.
Yeah.
What to do and what not to do, and when to do, when not to do.
Yeah.
So there's a when and there's a what, and there's a where, and there's a who, and there's a why.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much. Lovely answer.
Thank you so much. Okay, one last question, please.
No, let's have these last two. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am, for inspiring an entire generation, not just women, but men as well, for being who you are. As society, we made a lot of progress on various fronts, in technology, in business. But in public service, in politics, I think there is still a gap between what people want and what we have it. Is there a way in which, how can this gap be bridged? We get the same, respect, trust, which the political leaders can have from the people.
By increasing the revenue generation of GST. The more GST, the more infrastructure. The more infrastructure, more independent you are of the government, because there will be more facilities available for you to grow. What I'm saying is just, this is light-hearted. But I think it has to be a people's power in business creation,
Right.
people's power in productivity, people's power which moves the government to value what the people want. And it is happening already. Many politicians are sensing what the people want. And you see, that's where the women are becoming the prime voter. And how needs of the women are becoming prime needs of the politicians, because they're realizing that this is the constituency which needs to be worked on. And they are your bulk voters. So it's gradually changing. Similarly, the rural is segmental now. All these schemes of the centrally sponsored scheme last 5 years are absolutely people-centered. It may be not touching you as that low generation, but if you see the lower income groups, I think 70% people have benefited. Whether they got a toilet, whether they got a medical support, whether they got the gas connection, whether they got the medical aid, whether they got a better road or network, it worked. Or the rediwala got a loan, tax-free, or the artisan got a scholarship, or the children got scholarships, or the skill development, or the Atal innovation centers. It's benefited 70% of the have-nots to become haves. So the have-nots are becoming haves gradually, and as the having becomes the haves, like you, that's where the prosperity will come, and that's where the government will become sensitive to your needs more and more. People are not electing people now unnecessarily who's done nothing. Now they're looking for, kara kya hai hamare liye tumne? People are changing, and it will still change and change for the better. So Indian democracy, I think, is a lot on the move, and women will play a very vital role in electing the governments of the day. And women's security cannot come without good governance. And therefore, good governance means better administered, less corruption, more accessibility, more transparency, more empathy, more compassion, more readiness of good door-to-door services. It will happen. All these things will cannot go back. They cannot turn back. People will rebel against them. And the march of education, the march of skill development, all this is happening. So there's been a big march, I feel, as I've seen personally. I've seen with my own eyes when I delivered centrally sponsored schemes, how no toilets today have toilets. They were all going by the side of the canals, dirtying the canals. Today they have home toilets. It's a big change. All of them bank accounts. They all have some money in their accounts, and now and direct transfers going to people which has little money, which delivering of cereals to the doorstep. COVID was a big change maker, where COVID would have never got control if we had not delivered food grains at the doorsteps of the people. We delivered food grains at the doorstep. A truck would go down house to house, delivering 5 kg here, this kg here, 10 kg here. We delivered. Then only got COVID control. Imagine if they would all be out on the streets in the market, they would only spread COVID. But to keep them contained, this was house delivered, home delivered, direct transfer of money, so that they don't come out at all. So how every situation has been responded. It's changing, but will change for the better. I think India is looking for a better time in the next, at least a decade. Therefore, earn enough, contribute to the GST enough, so that infrastructure is built, so that the quality of life improves more and more.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, ma'am, for taking this question. You had a fantastic run as an IPS officer, as a tennis player, and then you contested elections. How did that go for you? And that probably didn't turn out the way, while I believe that you probably would have made a wonderful CM of Delhi. How did you take that in your stride, and how was that experience?
It was an experience, the best experience of my life, by losing it. Because it told me that you're not fit for it. It told me who I am, what I'm not. It clearly told me what I'm not. So there's no confusion left any time that I could be this. I tried, I risked, I did not succeed, but I also realized this is not me. So therefore, it's a realization which came through experience. Can I wind up with this?
Yes,
last one. Now friends, this is my last wind up for you. Friends, your beliefs become your thoughts. Your beliefs become your thoughts. Your thoughts become your words. Your words become your actions. Your actions become your habits. Your habits become your values. Your values become your destiny. Take care of every bit of it, whether it's thoughts, words, actions, habits, values, because this is what our destiny is. That's what has brought us all together, individually and collectively. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you very much for your time.